During the divorce at 74, I told my husband, take everything. I don't need anything. My lawyer almost fell off his chair in the courtroom. My husband bragged to his friends about his victory, but only I knew what I would do in a week. Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. For 47 years, I thought I knew what my marriage was. Richard and I had built a life together in our modest 3-bedroom house in Portland, Oregon. We raised 2 daughters, celebrated anniversaries at the same Italian restaurant on Morrison Street, and spent Sunday mornings reading the newspaper together over coffee. I believed in the permanence of our bond the way you believe in gravity, something so basic it never needs questioning. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday evening in March. I came home early from my book club. Martha had cancelled due to a migraine, and I found Richard hurriedly closing his laptop as I walked into the kitchen. The movement was too fast, too guilty. Just work emails, he said. But he hadn't worked in 3 years, not since his retirement from the accounting firm. I didn't say anything. Not then. The second sign came 2 weeks later. A receipt fell from his jacket pocket while I was sorting laundry. Dinner for 2 at a steakhouse downtown on a night he told me he was playing poker with his college buddies. The total was $187. Richard had always been careful with money, almost stingy. Who orders a $187 dinner and hides it from their wife? I started watching more carefully. The late-night phone calls he took in the garage. The new cologne that appeared in our bathroom, something expensive and nothing like the Old Spice he'd worn for decades. The way he'd started going to the gym 4 times a week after years of calling exercise a waste of time. At 76, my husband was suddenly worried about his looks. Then came the credit card statement I found in his desk drawer, the one for an account I didn't know existed. Hotel charges, jewelry purchases, lingerie from a boutique I'd never heard of, and certainly items not in my size. My hands shook as I photographed each page with my phone, though I wasn't sure yet what I would do with the proof. When I finally confronted him, Richard didn't even have the decency to lie well. Her name is Vanessa, he said as casually as if he were telling me about a new restaurant he'd discovered. She makes me feel alive again, Margaret. Can you understand that? Could I understand that? Could I understand that after 47 years of cooking his meals, raising his children, supporting his career, nursing him through 2 heart procedures and a cancer scare, I was apparently not enough to make him feel alive? He wanted a divorce. No, he demanded one. And Vanessa, this woman I'd never met, this 38-year-old yoga instructor he'd met at the gym, was already picking out furniture for the condo they planned to buy together. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Richard had clearly been planning this for months, maybe years. He had lawyers ready, papers drawn up, a plan in place. He wanted the house, our house where I'd raised my daughters, where I'd planted every rosebush in the garden, where my grandchildren took their first steps. He wanted his full pension, his retirement accounts, everything. And that's when I found myself sitting in that courtroom on a gray October morning, my lawyer, Patricia Chin, beside me, looking sharp and ready for battle in her navy suit. Richard sat across the aisle with his attorney, that smug look on his face, the one that said he'd already won. Patricia had prepared a strong case. We had documentation of the affair, proof of the secret credit cards, a solid argument for alimony, and a fair division of assets. She was ready to fight. But when the judge asked if I wanted to present my demands, I looked at Richard, at this man who'd shared my bed for nearly 5 decades and thought so little of me. And I said the words that made Patricia nearly fall off her chair. Your Honor, I don't want anything. He can have it all. The house, the money, the retirement accounts. I don't need any of it. Patricia grabbed my arm, whispering urgently. Margaret, what are you doing? But I just smiled. Richard's face showed confusion, then triumph. He actually grinned at his lawyer. They had no idea what I was planning to do in exactly 1 week. The courthouse steps felt steeper than I remembered. As I walked out into the cold October air, Patricia followed close behind, her heels clicking with an urgency that matched her voice. "Margaret, please tell me you have a strategy one don't know about," she said, pulling me aside near her car. "Because what you just did in there, that was financial suicide. Do you understand what you've given up?" I understood perfectly. I'd given up the house worth $620,000, Richard's pension of $4,800 a month, his 401k with $890,000, the investment account we'd built together. In the eyes of the law, I'd walked away from nearly $2 million. "Trust me," I told Patricia. "I know exactly what I'm doing." She studied my face for a long moment, then sighed. "I hope so, because I've been practicing family law for 23 years, and I've never seen anyone hand over everything without a fight. Your daughters are going to have questions." My daughters, Sarah and Jennifer, I'd have to call them tonight before Richard did. They'd be furious, confused, maybe even ashamed of me. They'd think their mother had given up, had rolled over and played dead. Let them think that for now. I drove home. Except it wasn't my home anymore, was it? I had 30 days to pack my belongings and leave, according to the agreement Richard's lawyer had presented. 30 days to erase myself from the house where I'd spent most of my adult life. The house was empty when I arrived. Richard was probably out celebrating with Vanessa, bragging about how he'd gotten everything without having to fight for it. I could picture him at some expensive restaurant, champagne glasses raised, toasting his victory over the foolish old woman who'd made it so easy for him. I walked through the rooms slowly, carefully. The living room, where we'd hosted countless dinner parties. The kitchen, where I'd baked birthday cakes for our daughters every year. The bedroom where we'd made love, argued, made up, dreamed about our future. Each space held memories that now felt poisoned by his betrayal. But here's what Richard didn't know. I'd been planning, too. 3 months ago, when I first found that credit card statement, I hadn't just taken photos. I'd started making phone calls, quiet, careful phone calls. I'd met with a financial advisor Richard knew nothing about, a woman named Susan Chin, Patricia's sister, as it turned out. Small world. Susan had asked me detailed questions about our finances, our assets, our lifestyle. And then she asked me something nobody else had. "Margaret, what do you really want out of this? Not what you think you deserve, not what's fair. What do you actually want?" I'd thought about that question for days. Did I want the house? Not really. It was too big, too full of ghosts now. Did I want Richard's money, money that would force me to keep giving him mental and emotional space just to manage numbers? What I wanted was something much simpler, and much more devastating. I wanted Richard to understand what he'd lost. I wanted him to feel the full weight of his choices. I wanted him to realize, when it was too late, that he traded something priceless for something worthless. And I wanted to do it in a way that was completely legal, impossible to challenge, and absolutely permanent. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of tea. The house felt different now, like it was already turning into a memory, a place I used to live rather than my home. I opened my email and began writing messages. The first one went to Susan Chin. "The court approved everything. We can proceed with phase 2. The second went to my daughter Sarah, the lawyer in Seattle. "I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come to Portland this weekend? Don't tell your father." The third went to an old coworker from my teaching days, a woman named Dorothy Brennan who now worked in real estate. "Dorothy, remember when you said you owed me a favor? I'm ready to collect." The fourth and final email was to someone Richard had never met, someone he didn't know existed in my life. My brother's son Thomas, a private investigator based in Sacramento. Tom, I need everything you can find on Vanessa Hartley. Age 38, yoga instructor, lives somewhere in Portland. I need her employment history, her credit report, any public records, and I need it fast. I pressed send on all 4 emails and closed my laptop. Patricia thought I'd committed financial suicide in that courtroom. Richard thought he'd won. They were both wrong. Sarah arrived on Saturday morning, her face tight with worry. She'd driven 3 hours from Seattle, leaving her husband and kids behind. We sat in the breakfast nook, the same spot where I'd helped her with homework 30 years ago, and I told her everything, not about Richard's affair. She already knew about that. He'd called both daughters a month ago to explain his side. What I told her was what I was planning to do. Mom, this is... Sarah paused, her lawyer brain working. This is actually brilliant. Risky, but brilliant. Does Patricia know? Some of it, I admitted. Not all of it. The fewer people who know the full plan, the better. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay. I'm in. What do you need from me? Legal oversight. Make sure every step I take is completely by the book. I can't give Richard any reason to claim I did something illegal or unethical. Done. She opened her laptop. Walk me through it again. Step by step, we spent the next 4 hours going over details. Sarah made notes, asked questions, pointed out possible problems. By the time she left that evening, we had a timeline and a strategy that was solid. The first response came from Thomas on Sunday night. His email included 3 attachments and a note. Aunt Margaret, you're going to want to read this sitting down. He was right. Vanessa Hartley wasn't just Richard's mistress. She was a professional one. Thomas had found proof of at least 3 other relationships with wealthy older men over the past 5 years. Each relationship followed the same pattern: meet at a gym or yoga class, build a romance, push the man to leave his wife, then drain his money before moving on to the next target. One man in Seattle had lost $340,000 before his adult children stepped in. Another in Tacoma had refinanced his house to fund Vanessa's business ventures that never happened. A third had died of a heart attack shortly after discovering Vanessa had emptied their joint account. But here's what made my blood run cold. Thomas had found text messages. Vanessa had been careless with her digital security. And Tom had contacts who could access things that probably weren't strictly legal to access, though he promised the information could be confirmed through legal ways. The messages between Vanessa and someone named Crystal explained everything. They were partners running this scam together. Crystal would find targets, wealthy men over 65, preferably recently retired, married, and easy to hook with attention from a younger woman. Vanessa would approach, build the relationship, create emotional dependence. And there, in a message dated 6 weeks ago, I found the proof I needed. The old man's almost ready. He thinks we're buying a condo together. LOL. Soon as the divorce is final and he liquidates everything, I'll clean him out and move on. This one's worth almost $2 million. Easy money, the old man. Richard. I read the messages 3 times, my hands shaking. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't even just about a younger woman making him feel alive. Richard was a mark, a target, a victim of a con artist who probably never felt anything real for him. Part of me, a small, bitter part, felt a flash of satisfaction. Let him be fooled. Let him learn the hard way. But the larger part of me, the part that had loved this man for 47 years, felt something I didn't expect. Pity and protectiveness. He was a fool. Yes, he'd betrayed me. Absolutely. But he was also walking into a trap that would ruin him. I called Sarah. The situation just changed, I told her. Richard's not just having an affair. He's being conned. There was a long pause. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? The old Margaret would have warned him, saved him, protected him anyway. The old Margaret would have put his safety above her own pain. But I wasn't the old Margaret anymore. I'm going to let it play out, I said. But I'm also going to make sure that when it does, I'm in position to pick up the pieces, my pieces, not his. Mom, Sarah said carefully, are you sure? On Monday morning, I did something I'd never done in my whole life. I walked into a bank and opened accounts only I controlled, accounts Richard knew nothing about. I met with Susan Chin in her downtown office, and we started setting up legal and financial structures that would protect me no matter what happened next. And then I did the first thing that would make Richard realize something was wrong. I hired movers and took everything that was legally mine, my grandmother's china, my mother's jewelry, the paintings I'd inherited, my personal books, my clothes, my photos, everything with clear proof it was separate property. When Richard came home that Tuesday evening and saw the half-empty house, he called me right away. Margaret, what the hell is going on? I'm moving out, I said calmly, like we agreed. I have 23 days left, but I thought I'd get started. Where are you going? That's not your concern anymore, Richard. I heard Vanessa's voice in the background asking questions. Good. Let them wonder. Let them feel the first shake of uncertainty. The trap was starting to close. They just didn't know it yet. Dorothy Brennan found me the perfect apartment within 48 hours, a one-bedroom place in the Pearl District, modern and small, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was nothing like the house, and that was exactly the point. The owner's flexible on the lease terms, Dorothy said as we walked through the empty space. Month to month if you want it. And Margaret, it's good to see you taking charge of your life. I moved in on Thursday. Sarah drove down again to help, bringing Jennifer this time. Both my daughters had been horrified when I told them the truth about Vanessa, though I'd held back the worst details. They didn't need to know their father was being set up for total financial ruin. Not yet. Mom, why aren't you warning Dad? Jennifer asked as we unpacked boxes in my new kitchen. She was the softer of my two daughters, always the peacemaker. I know he hurt you, but this woman is dangerous. Your father made his choice, I said, arranging my grandmother's teacups in the cabinet. He's a grown man. He doesn't need me to save him from his own decisions. But then I turned to face her. Your father looked me in the eye and told me that woman makes him feel alive after 47 years of marriage. Do you know what that does to a person? She fell silent. That night, alone in my new apartment, I received an email from Susan Chin with the subject line, Phase 2 complete. I'd taken the divorce settlement, nothing, and turned it into leverage. Susan had helped me restructure everything I did have, the inheritance from my parents I'd kept in a separate account. Richard had forgotten about it. $340,000. The life insurance policy on my mother that paid out 2 years ago, $180,000. The small rental property my aunt left me in Eugene worth $280,000. Assets that were mine alone and had never been marital property. But more importantly, Susan had helped me do something else, something that would become very important soon. I'd purchased life insurance on Richard. It sounds cold. Calculated. Maybe it was. But the policy was perfectly legal. We were still technically married when I bought it. I had an insurable interest, and Richard had even signed the medical forms without reading them carefully. He thought it was paperwork for his own policy renewal. The policy would pay out $750,000, and the beneficiary was me. Friday afternoon, everything blew up. Richard showed up at my new apartment building, Vanessa with him. The doorman called up, and I told him to let them come. I'd been expecting this. They walked into my small living room like invaders. Vanessa's eyes scanned everything with a hungry, judging look. She was beautiful, I had to admit, tall, blonde, yogurt-toned, wearing expensive athleisure that probably came from Richard's secret credit card. "We need to talk," Richard said. But his voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Fear. About what? I sat in my reading chair, not offering them seats. Vanessa stepped forward. About whatever you're planning. Margaret, Richard told me you've always been a manipulative woman, and we're not going to let you interfere with our life together. Manipulative. I'd spent 47 years being accommodating, supportive, and selfless. But sure, now I was manipulative. I'm not planning anything, I said calmly. I gave you everything you wanted, the house, the money, the freedom to be together. What more could I possibly do? Then why are you asking questions about me? Vanessa's pretty face twisted with anger. Why did someone contact my former employer, my landlord? Why is someone digging into my background? So Thomas had been less careful than I'd hoped. Or maybe Vanessa had better security than we thought. I have no idea what you're talking about, I lied smoothly. Richard stepped closer, and for a moment I saw something dangerous in his eyes. Margaret, if you try to ruin Vanessa's reputation, if you try to interfere with our plans, I will make your life hell. I'll contest the divorce settlement. I'll claim you coerced me. I'll drag you through court for years. On what grounds? I met his stare. You got everything you asked for. I signed everything your lawyer put in front of me. We know you're up to something, Vanessa hissed. Women like you don't just give up. You're planning revenge. I stood up, and even though I was 5 inches shorter than Vanessa, I made sure my voice sounded firm. Get out of my apartment. Both of you. You have what you wanted. Leave me alone to build my new life. This isn't over, Richard said. Yes, it is. The marriage is over. The divorce is final. And you won. Congratulations. Now get out. They left, but not before Vanessa turned at the door and said, You're a pathetic old woman, Margaret. Richard and I are going to be so happy together. We're buying a condo next week. Did he tell you? A beautiful place in the South waterfront. Richard's liquidating his retirement accounts to pay cash for it. My face must have shown something, shock, maybe, or satisfaction, because Vanessa smiled like she'd scored a hit. That's right. Every penny is going into our new life, and there's nothing you can do about it. After they left, I sat in my chair for a long time, watching the city lights come on outside my window. Richard was liquidating everything, pulling money out of protected retirement accounts and putting it into what? A condo owned only by a con artist, cash Vanessa could touch. He was doing exactly what she wanted, walking right into her trap, and there was nothing I could or would do to stop him. I took the next few days off, turned off my phone, didn't check email, didn't think about Richard or Vanessa or revenge. I went to Powell's Books and bought novels I'd been meaning to read for years. I took myself to lunch at nice restaurants. I sat in coffee shops and watched people live their lives. I needed to rest, to rebuild my strength, because I had a feeling the worst was still coming. On the 4th day of my self-imposed break, I got a text from an unknown number. Margaret, it's Vanessa. Can we talk woman to woman? I think there's been a misunderstanding. I stared at the message for a long moment. This was interesting. The anger from Friday had changed into what? An olive branch. A new plan. I texted back, I don't think we have anything to discuss. Her reply came right away. Please, just coffee, 30 minutes. I think if we actually talked, you'd understand that I'm not the villain you think I am. I never wanted to hurt you. The nerve was almost impressive. But I was curious. What angle was she trying now? And more importantly, what did this change mean? Had Richard started to doubt her? Had their plan hit a problem? Fine, I texted back. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Stumptown Coffee on Division. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table near the window where I could see the street. Vanessa walked in exactly on time, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual expensive athleisure, trying to look friendly, normal. She'd even toned down her makeup. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sitting down across from me with a lavender latte. "I know you have no reason to trust me." "You're right about that." She took a breath, and I watched her shape her face into an expression of shaky sincerity. "Margaret, I need you to understand something. I never meant to fall in love with Richard. It just happened. And I know that sounds like a cliché, but it's true." I said nothing. I just sipped my black coffee and waited. "The thing is," she continued, "Richard's been talking about you a lot lately, about your marriage, about the life you built together, and I can see that he's conflicted. Part of him still loves you, I think." Ah. There it was. The hook. "And I was thinking," Vanessa said, her voice soft and reasonable, "maybe there's a way we could all move forward without so much anger and pain. Maybe you and Richard could even be friends eventually. For your daughter's sake, if nothing else." "What are you really asking me, Vanessa?" She leaned forward. "Richard's worried about the life insurance policy, the one you took out on him. He thinks it's morbid, like you're waiting for him to die. And I think maybe if you canceled it, it would show him you're not trying to hold on to him or control him anymore. It would be a gesture of good faith." So that was it. The insurance policy had scared them. Good. "The policy is my business," I said calmly. "It's perfectly legal, and it doesn't affect Richard's life in any way. But it makes him uncomfortable. Then he should have thought about my comfort before he had an affair." Vanessa's mask slipped for a second, an angry flash on her pretty face. Then she fixed it again. "I understand your pain, but holding on to bitterness will only poison your own life. Don't you want to move on? Find happiness again?" "I am moving on. I'm very happy in my new apartment." "Are you?" She tilted her head, studying me. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a lonely old woman who gave up everything and has nothing to show for it. Richard and I are building a beautiful life together. We're buying that condo next week. All cash, no mortgage. We're planning a trip to Bali in the spring. We're talking about maybe opening a yoga studio together." Every word was meant to hurt, to make me feel small and thrown away and pathetic. And a month ago, it might have worked. But I'd spent 4 days reading books, drinking coffee, watching the city. And I'd remembered something important. I didn't need Richard's approval anymore. I didn't need to prove anything to Vanessa. I finished my coffee and stood up. "I hope you and Richard are very happy together. I mean that sincerely. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans." "Wait." Vanessa reached for my arm, but I pulled away. "We're done here. Don't contact me again." I walked out into the cold November morning, and I felt lighter than I had in months. That afternoon, I met with my book club for the first time since the divorce. I'd been avoiding them, ashamed, and not ready for their questions and pity. But Martha had called that morning, insisting I come. "We've been worried about you," she said when I arrived at her house in Laurelhurst. The other women, 6 of us total, friends for over 15 years, gathered around with tea and sympathy. I told them everything, not about my plan, but about Richard, about Vanessa, about the divorce. And instead of pity, I found something I didn't expect. Solidarity. "My ex-husband did almost the same thing," said Patricia, not my lawyer Patricia, but another Patricia who taught high school English. "Left me for his secretary when I was 62. Thought she was in love with him. She cleaned out his bank account and left him within a year. Men are fools, Martha said bluntly. And I'm sorry, Margaret, but Richard was always a bit of a fool. You were just too loyal to see it. These women had known me for 15 years. They'd seen me at my best and my worst. And they didn't think less of me for what happened. They thought less of Richard. What are you going to do now? Asked Caroline, our youngest member at 58. Live my life, I said. That's all. Just live my life. Later, as I was leaving, Martha pulled me aside. Margaret, I know that look in your eyes. You're planning something. I'm not. Yes, you are. And good for you. Whatever it is, I hope it works. Richard deserves everything that's coming to him. I drove home as the sun set over Portland. And for the first time in months, I felt like I had an army behind me. Not just Sarah and Jennifer. Not just Susan and Patricia Chin. Not just Thomas with his investigation skills. I had my friends, my community, my life. And Richard and Vanessa, they were already starting to panic. I could afford to wait. The call came from Jennifer on a Wednesday evening. Mom, Dad wants to come over and talk to you. He says it's important. He sounds different, almost desperate. Tell him no. He said he needs to apologize, that he's made mistakes and wants to make things right. I closed my eyes. This was the next step in their script. I'd been expecting it. When intimidation didn't work, when Vanessa's manipulation failed, they'd try another approach: regret, reconnection, emotional pressure. Fine, I said. Tell him he can come on Friday, 6 o'clock, my apartment. Alone. But I knew Richard wouldn't come alone. Friday at 6 o'clock, my doorman buzzed up. Mrs. Brennan, you have visitors, a Mr. Richard Brennan and a Mrs. Hartley. Of course. I let them up. But this time, I was ready. I'd asked Sarah to be on standby on FaceTime, listening but not visible. I'd set up my phone on the bookshelf, recording everything. If they wanted games, I'd have proof. Richard looked awful. He'd lost weight, his face was drawn, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Vanessa stood beside him, her hand possessively on his arm. But even she looked tense. Margaret, Richard began, his voice shaky. Thank you for seeing us. You have 15 minutes. They sat on my small couch. Vanessa's eyes darted around the apartment, counting, judging. Richard leaned forward, hands clasped. I've made terrible mistakes, he said. I can see that now. The divorce, the way I treated you, everything. I was selfish and cruel, and I'm sorry. The words sounded practiced. I waited. And I was thinking, he continued, maybe we acted too quickly. Maybe there's a way we could reconsider some of the arrangements. The divorce is final, yes, but we could still work something out. We were married for 47 years, Margaret. That has to count for something. What are you asking for, Richard? Vanessa jumped in, her voice sweet as syrup. Richard feels guilty about taking everything. He wants to give you a fair settlement after all. Maybe half the house value and some of the retirement money. It's only right. I almost laughed. This was the trick. Offer me money I had already given up, money Richard had probably already spent, or planned to spend on that condo. We're willing to give you $300,000, Richard said quickly. Cash. In exchange for you signing some paperwork. What paperwork? Vanessa pulled documents from her designer purse. Just some clarifications about the divorce settlement, making sure you can't make any future claims on Richard's assets or income. And she hesitated. A termination of that life insurance policy. There it was. The real reason. I took the papers and read them carefully. They weren't just asking me to give up future claims. They were asking me to sign away any legal right to question how Richard spent marital assets, to agree that the divorce settlement was made with full knowledge and consent, to state I wasn't pressured or tricked. They were trying to protect themselves from any future legal action. And the life insurance cancellation was right there on page 3. $300,000, I said slowly, in exchange for signing away every legal protection I might have. It's generous, considering you walked away with nothing, Vanessa said, her voice sharpening. Most women in your position would jump at this offer. I set the papers down on my coffee table. No. Richard's face went white. Margaret, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You got what you wanted in the divorce. These papers are unnecessary unless you're planning to do something you think I might see you over later. Which makes me wonder, what are you planning, Richard? Nothing. His voice rose. We're not planning anything. We just want a clean break. You have a clean break. The divorce is final. Vanessa stood suddenly, her beautiful face turning ugly. You bitter old, you're doing this to punish us. You can't stand to see Richard happy. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply not signing documents that aren't in my interest. You took out life insurance on him like he's already dead. Vanessa shouted. Like you're waiting for him to die so you can cash in. That's sick. That's psychotic. The policy is legal. Richard signed the medical forms himself. Richard stood too, moving toward me, and for a moment I felt real fear. His hands were shaking, his face red. You're trying to control me, just like you always did, making me feel guilty, manipulating me. I'm not doing anything to you. You're in control of your own life now. You told me Vanessa makes you feel alive, so go be alive with her. We know what you're doing, Vanessa hissed, stepping between Richard and me. We know you hired an investigator. We know you're trying to dig up dirt on me to turn Richard against me. But it won't work. Richard loves me. He's not going to believe your lies. I haven't told Richard anything about you. Whatever he believes or doesn't believe is his choice. Liar. Vanessa was fully exposed now, her face twisted with rage. You're a manipulative, controlling, pathetic old woman who can't accept that she's been replaced by someone younger and better. Richard doesn't love you anymore. He probably never really loved you. You were just convenient. A placeholder. Each word was meant to hurt, but they hit me like tiny stones, bouncing off, because I saw what Vanessa didn't. Richard was watching her outburst, and something in his eyes was changing. Doubt was creeping in. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you, and don't come back. We're not signing anything without you signing too, Richard said, but his voice had lost its strength. Then I guess we're stuck. Leave. They left. Vanessa nearly dragging Richard out, still muttering about lawsuits and legal action and how I'd regret this. After the door closed, I stood there shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from the effort of staying calm, from the surreal nightmare of watching my husband of 47 years become a stranger. Sarah's voice came from my phone. Mom, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. That was terrifying. Are you sure you're safe? Should I drive down? I'm fine, honey. Really? They're desperate, which means the plan is working. But that night, lying in bed in my small apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Real fear, not of what Richard and Vanessa might do, but of what might happen if my plan failed. If I'd misjudged, if I'd given up everything for nothing. Then I remembered Vanessa's face as she screamed at me, the mask completely gone, the ugliness fully revealed. And I remembered Richard's expression as he watched her, that spark of doubt. The fear hardened into something colder, stronger, more focused. Let them panic. Let them show their true selves. My plan was working perfectly. The call came 3 weeks later at 2 o'clock in the morning. Jennifer's name flashed on my phone. Mom, it's Dad. He's in the hospital. I was out of bed at once, pulling on clothes. What happened? Heart attack. They think he's stable, but Mom, Jennifer's voice cracked. Vanessa's not here. She's not at the hospital. Dad keeps asking for her, and no one can find her. I drove to Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center through empty streets, my mind racing. A heart attack. Richard was 76. He had a history of heart problems. This was serious. This was real. And Vanessa was gone. Sarah and Jennifer met me in the waiting room. Both had clearly been crying. They're running tests, Sarah said. He's awake. The doctors think he'll be okay, but Mom, there's more. Tell me. Jennifer handed me her phone. On the screen was Richard's banking app. Apparently, he'd given the girls access in case of emergency. The account showed a balance of $8,247. The retirement account is empty, Sarah said, her voice hollow. The investment account, empty. The proceeds from selling the house to that developer last week, gone. Everything. She took everything. I sat down hard on a plastic chair. Even though I knew this was coming, even though I'd predicted it, seeing it in plain numbers was different. $8,000. That's all that was left of Richard's $2 million. There's more, Jennifer whispered. She showed me another screen, a legal document. The condo they were supposedly buying together, it's in Vanessa's name only. Dad transferred $800,000 for it, but he's not on the title. He has no legal ownership. And she's gone. I asked. Her phone's disconnected. Her yoga studio says she quit 3 days ago. Her apartment is empty. The landlord confirmed it. She disappeared, Mom. She took everything and vanished. My daughters looked at me, crushed, waiting for me to fall apart, or say, I told you so, or do something. But all I felt was a cold, clear calm. Can I see him? Richard looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors around him, his face gray against the white sheets. His eyes opened when I walked in, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Total defeat. Margaret. His voice was barely a whisper. She's gone. Vanessa's gone. I know. She took everything. The money, the house proceeds, everything. I don't understand. She said she loved me. She said, his voice broke. I pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. Part of me wanted to explode at him, to tell him exactly how much he deserved this. But looking at this broken old man who used to be my husband, I felt something more complicated than anger. Richard, I need to tell you something, I said quietly. And you're going to listen. From my purse, I pulled out a folder, the one Thomas had put together. Vanessa Hartley isn't her real name. It's Vanessa Kovich. She's done this before. 3 times that we can prove, probably more. I showed him the evidence, the other victims, the pattern, the text messages between Vanessa and her partner Crystal planning the whole scam from the start. Richard's face went from gray to white. You knew, he whispered. You knew what she was, and you didn't tell me. I tried to warn you indirectly. I gave you chances to see the truth, but you were so sure I was the villain, that I was manipulative and controlling, that you couldn't see what was right in front of you. But you could have. Could have what, Richard? Saved you from yourself. You were a grown man making choices. You left me after 47 years for a woman who made you feel alive. You wanted this. You got it. His monitor started beeping faster. A nurse rushed in, checked his numbers, and gave me a warning look. I stood to leave. Wait, Richard gasped. Margaret, please. I have nothing. I'm 76 years old, and I have $8,000 to my name. What am I going to do? I looked at him for a long moment. This was the turning point, the moment I'd been building toward for months. The life insurance policy I took out on you, I said, I'm canceling it tomorrow. You're no longer my problem, Richard. You wanted independence. You have it now. But the girls. The girls love you, but they're not going to support you financially. They have their own families, their own lives. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Richard, that $8,000 you have left, that's almost exactly what I spent on your birthday and Christmas presents over our 47-year marriage, averaged per year. Think about that. In the hallway, Sarah and Jennifer were waiting, their faces torn. Mom, what are you doing? Sarah asked. He has nothing. He'll end up on the street. No, he won't, I said calmly. He'll file for bankruptcy. He'll apply for Medicaid. He'll move into a small apartment and live on Social Security. He'll survive. People do it every day. But your father made his choices. He chose Vanessa over me. He chose to liquidate all his assets. He chose not to listen to reason. I will not save him from the consequences. Jennifer was crying. This is cruel, Mom. You're being cruel. Maybe I was. Or maybe this was justice, finally served cold. I went home to my apartment and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I sat in Susan Chen's office signing the paperwork to cancel Richard's life insurance policy. You're sure about this? Susan asked. It's a significant asset. I'm sure. I don't need it anymore. What I didn't tell Susan, what I didn't need to tell anyone, was that I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. Richard hadn't died, but he'd lost everything anyway. The insurance policy had done its job. It had made him and Vanessa paranoid, pushed them into mistakes, and acted like bait that showed their desperation. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you won. You destroyed Richard's life. You're a monster. I showed it to Susan. Vanessa, probably, or someone she's working with, trying to make you feel guilty. Block the number. I did. Over the next few weeks, the fallout kept going. Richard was released from the hospital with a stent and strict orders to reduce stress. He moved into a studio apartment in Gresham that Sarah helped him find, paying the deposit with her own money, despite my advice not to. The police opened an investigation into Vanessa Kovich, but she had vanished completely. Her partner, Crystal, vanished too. The authorities said they likely left the state, maybe the country. Richard's money was gone, filtered through enough accounts and shell companies that getting it back was almost impossible. Richard tried to sue for part of the divorce settlement back, claiming pressure and coercion. His lawyer, a cheap one he could barely afford, filed it. Patricia Chin called me, laughing. Margaret, this is the most ridiculous filing I've seen in 20 years. He's claiming you manipulated him into giving you nothing, that you pressured him into a settlement where you got zero assets. No judge in their right mind will touch this. She was right. The case was thrown out within 2 weeks. But the Real win came on a cold January morning, 3 months after Richard's heart attack. I was having coffee at Stumptown, the same place Vanessa tried to manipulate me, when I saw her. Not Vanessa. Crystal. The partner. She was sitting at a corner table with her laptop, and she didn't recognize me. I could have walked away. I probably should have. But I pulled out my phone, took a photo, and texted it to Thomas. Is this Crystal? His response came back in seconds. Yes. Where? I sent him the address. She's still here. What should I do? Keep her there if you can. I'm calling Portland PD. I have a contact in the fraud division. I ordered another coffee and sat where I could watch Crystal. She looked different than in the photos, darker hair, glasses, more conservative clothes. But it was her. And she looked confident, careless, sure she was safe. The police arrived 12 minutes later. I watched from across the street as they walked up to her table. Watched her face shift from confusion to panic. Watched them lead her out in handcuffs. One detective called me later that day. Mrs. Brennan. Detective Martinez. I understand you identified one of our suspects. Is that what I did? Crystal Morrison has been on our radar for months. We just couldn't locate her. Thanks to your tip, we have her in custody, and she's talking, giving us information about Vanessa Kovich's location, their operation, everything. She's trying to make a deal. Will the victims get their money back? Some of it, maybe. It'll take time. These cases are complicated. And Richard, your ex-husband, there was a pause. We'll do our best, ma'am. But I won't lie to you. Most of his assets are probably gone for good. I thanked him and hung up. That evening, I met my daughters for dinner. Sarah, Jennifer, and I sat in a small Italian restaurant in the Pearl District, the same neighborhood as my apartment. The police arrested Vanessa's partner, I told them. They're hoping to find Vanessa, too. Jennifer looked relieved. Maybe Dad will get some money back. Maybe. Don't count on it. Sarah studied my face. Mom, are you happy after everything that's happened? After everything you've done, are you happy? I thought about it. Was I happy? Richard was living in a studio apartment on Social Security and whatever the girls quietly slipped him. He'd lost his house, his retirement, his dignity, his health. He'd learned the hardest possible way that betrayal has consequences. Vanessa was running from federal authorities, her face on wanted posters, her freedom measured in borrowed time. And me? I was sitting in a nice restaurant with my daughters, about to order pasta and wine. I lived in a beautiful apartment I could afford with my inheritance. I had my book club, my friends, my freedom, my self-respect. I had everything that actually mattered. Yes, I told Sarah. I'm happy. And I meant it. 6 months later, I stood in my new office. Calling it an office was being generous. It was really just a corner of the local community center where I'd started teaching creative writing classes to seniors twice a week. Mrs. Brennan, can you look at my story? Martha from my book club held up her notebook. Yes, the same Martha who'd had the migraine that fateful evening. She'd signed up for my class along with 3 other women from our group. Teaching again felt like finding myself again. I'd left education 20 years ago to support Richard's career, but words had always been my first love. My phone rang as I walked to Heart Coffee, my favorite independent shop. Patricia Chin, my lawyer. Margaret, I have news. They found Vanessa. I sat down on a bench. Where? Mexico. Running another scam in Puerto Vallarta. She's being extradited. With Crystal's testimony and the evidence, she's looking at 15 to 20 years. And the money, they've recovered about 30%. Richard might see $100,000 back. $100,000. Not the nearly $2 million he'd lost, but something. After we hung up, I sat watching people pass by. Couples, families, old men with dogs. Life moving forward in all its messy beauty. I felt nothing, no triumph, no celebration. Vanessa being arrested didn't give me my 47 years back. It was just consequences, finally catching up. But my life was good. I joined watercolor classes at the art museum, reconnected with old teaching friends, and I started dating. His name was Frank, a retired high school principal, 72, widowed for 5 years. We met at Powell's Books. He was kind, funny, curious, and he had his own life. We went to movies, tried new restaurants, took weekend trips to the coast. It was companionship without desperation. Meanwhile, Richard's life became exactly what I predicted, the studio apartment in Gresham, Social Security checks. He even got a part-time job at Home Depot. 76-year-old Richard in an orange apron, helping customers find light fixtures. Sarah said he'd lost weight, looked older. The heart attack had changed him. Jennifer said he asked about me sometimes, whether I was happy, whether I ever thought about getting back together. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him you were thriving. Because I was. Not in spite of the divorce, but because of it. Richard leaving forced me to build a life that was truly mine. The news about Vanessa's arrest made the papers. Portland yoga instructor arrested in multi-state elder fraud scheme. Her mugshot showed her worn out and desperate. I showed it to Frank over dinner. Do you feel proven right? He asked. I feel free, I said. That's better than proven right. And it was true. I was free from the weight of a marriage that had turned into a cage, from always making myself smaller so Richard could feel bigger. I was 74 years old, and I was finally completely free. Later that night, Sarah emailed. Mom, Dad wants to meet for coffee. He says he needs to apologize properly. What should I tell him? I replied right away. Tell him I wish him well, but no. Some chapters need to stay closed. Because that's what Richard was now, a closed chapter. I poured a glass of wine, put on some jazz, and opened my laptop. I'd been writing my own story, a novel about a woman who finds strength she didn't know she had. The cursor blinked, waiting. I began to type. So, that's my story, how I lost everything at 74 and found myself instead. Here's what I learned. Sometimes the worst thing that happens becomes the door to your best life. You can't save people from their own choices. Revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about refusing to let betrayal define you. Most importantly, it's never too late to start over. So here's my question. What would you have done? Warned him? Fought for the money, or let him face the consequences? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more stories. Thank you for listening. The end.